I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Our Friday edition is the Healing Circle. We'll be joined momentarily by Dr. Breveda Akinsanya and other members of the team, but I see my colleague and writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray is here. Brenda, how you doing?
I'm fine, and you, Al?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. I don't know if you noticed Monday's paper, you got 3 front page stories.
I saw that.
Newspaper. So you burning that candle. Good job. Good work.
Thank you so much. Enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all the energy and the experience and insight that you bring to Insight News. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, but I'm learning from you, publisher.
We learn from each other, and I enjoy reading and editing your copy. And this relationship where you're part of these interviews that I do every day, and you generate the story, and I have a chance to collaborate with you in the editing process. I think we end up with very, very, very strong products.
It's great.
And I think that we're doing great work in interviewing a whole variety of people on a whole variety of topics, from health and education to culture and art to law and ethics to business to government. It's been an exciting journey, and I'm glad that we're taking this tact to communicate, to inform our people. I've said that the 3 I's are the mantra for Insight News. The 3 I's are to inform, to instruct, and to inspire. So that's our job every day. Information. And then what do you do with the information? You need instruction, right? Do this, do that, do this, do that, then do this, then do that. And then how do people come to believe and know that this information and these instructions have value and meaning? It's inspiration, telling stories of people who've been there and done that, who are there, who are doing it, and their energy, their testimony, we bear witness to. And we do that with the spirit of enabling other people to see themselves in the light of the doers, the movers and the shakers. So I feel good about it. I feel good.
We've got to get your book done. You're too heavy.
In time.
Marcus, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Now we do.
How are you?
How are you?
Outstanding, alive and well, thank you.
And how are your kids for the summer?
They're excited to have a break. We made sure we offered a lot of different programming for them over the summer to keep them busy. So everybody's doing great.
That's good.
Marcus, you're kind of in a shadow. I don't know if you got light in the back, but not light on your face. And I don't know if you can move your laptop around and put a light on, like a camera light, but you're a little bit shaded there, so we'll get us all proper lighting. Yeah, we'll get there in time. Marcus, always good to see you and always good to connect with you. And thank you for the nice notes you send from time to time about people checking out the program in Ohio.
Yes.
Today's the top of mind right now in Minnesota is the sentencing of Derek Chauvin. And I wanted to take a minute to reflect on that. Not from a scientific lens, but from a personal, experiential lens, from the sense of what the heartbeat and the mindset of the community is as we watch the continuing unfolding of this quest for justice around the death, the murder of George Floyd. Today, Derek Chauvin, the former police officer, will be sentenced in the court in downtown Minneapolis. I think the proceedings start in about 20 minutes. And maybe before this show is over, we'll know what the judge is going to impose in terms of a sentence for the charge of second-degree murder. He was also found guilty in the charge of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, I think. Those are the 3 charges that he was found guilty on. But what are you hearing on the street in Ohio as people watch this? And Brenda, what are you hearing through your networks about the status of this trial right now?
I'll allow Brenda to go first.
Oh, no, Marcus, your guest. You go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of anxiety and anticipation just to in a desire for justice. It's a lot of rumblings going on here in Ohio. We've seen a number of examples historically where we haven't felt that justice had been served. So it's just a lot of rumblings and concerns in that area, So trying to build the community's confidence, and to get the youth more comfortable, we have to start building them up to trust in the justice system, because there's a lot of separation there. Because usually the first people we call, we complain about them, but the first people we call when there's an issue, we call law enforcement. So highlighting great law enforcement at this time as well in our community. I had an opportunity to talk to my prayer partner, Officer Gould, and my godfather's a law officer as well. So just making sure they're still okay, and sending those messages out to other young officers as well that want to get into the industry. I even had one of my students, he's 20, he's going to have to wait till he's 21. He wants to become a law officer. So just not discouraging, but encouraging, because, we have to be in those rooms as well. It's important.
I have two cousins here in Minneapolis that are in law enforcement. One was with the Minneapolis Police Department. He transferred to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the state police, and is now serving in a reservation community on the, I think, the White Earth Reservation up near Bemidji, Minnesota. And this cousin is, in fact, Native American and enrolled in the Ho-Chunk Nation, which is, part of southern and central Minnesota. The other cousin is a cousin on my mom's side who is maybe a 2-year, 3-year officer on the Minneapolis Police Department, doing a good job, and we're proud of him. He's also a Marine, so he does reserve duty on a regular basis and does active duty and comes back. But he's committed, and I think it's important, as you said, if we have relatives that are in the service of the community as police officers or social workers or teachers, we hold them up. And we lift up and we appreciate the value that their example brings to all of us, right? And we continue to affirm them in their decisions to pursue the kind of service that they're giving to our community. And I think it's wonderful. And I think it's good to talk about, as I had mentioned a couple weeks ago, both careers in law enforcement but as well as careers in the military. So those are my thoughts. Dr. B is with us here, Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya, who is our leader with the African American Child Wellness Institute and convener with me of this Healing Circle on Friday. Dr. B, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much again for hosting and bringing voice to the community and wisdom, and just actually narrating our history virtually as well as in person with your work. And all of you on this panel, I love and adore you. So I'm glad to have this distinguished panel here to talk today, because these are people who actually know what they're talking about. They've lived it and they've seen it and they're wise. And I'm grateful to be amongst you as we talk about how to heal and be well in our community.
And so the question, Dr. B, for me is, how does the unfolding of today's chapter in the Derek Chauvin trial, or today's chapter in the witness that the world is providing to the life and death of George Floyd, this is the latest iteration or discussion or chapter in that. How does the world and how do individuals put that together? What's the context from your point of view as a health expert and health leader and thought leader?
Thank you. I'd like to say that there is definitely a developmental piece to it in terms of age. And I heard you earlier, Brother Marcus was talking about how, encouraging young men and women who want to go into law enforcement, letting them know that that's a noble profession and that caring for your community in any capacity is a noble act. It's an act of love. It's an act of reclamation of our value and our humanity. So any profession or anything that one does that promotes our healing and our togetherness and our existence and furthers our existence is a great thing. I think about Martin Luther King when he went out with talking about the garbage men and talking about the people who are custodians and how he said, you know, if you're going to mop or sweep or lay bricks, you do it with pride and you be the best that you can be at whatever it is you do. So when I think about the world looking at us right now, the question is always, are we bearing witness to justice? Are we bearing witness to hope? Are we bearing witness to righteousness and to affirming humanity of another human being, especially ones who's Black? And so the talk in town, from children on up to the geriatric clients that I see in their late 80s, since many of them still are talking about freedom, they're still talking about safety. Safety. Am I safe? And what are the signs of safety? If you do something bad to me, is something bad going to happen? Because the first thing children learn is you break that lamp when your mama told you not to run through the house. Something bad's going to happen. You learn consequences go with behaviors. And sometimes you learn that grace goes with it. You don't get what you should have gotten and you get something else. So we know, we teach that from early childhood. So when I think about this case with Chauvin and the sentencing, I just think the world is looking to see if it's justice. Children are looking for fairness. They're trying to see if you do something, does it happen? Do you get in trouble? And so I think, I think that's what we're looking at, is there integrity in the world? And with that, I'll pass my talking stick to Sister Brenda. Can I get an amen?
You get double amen from me always. While you were talking, Dr. B, I was thinking about Darnella, and I was thinking about how she has been nominated for the prize, Nobel Peace Prize.
Pulitzer, I think.
Was it the Pulitzer?
Yeah.
One of the big prizes.
Yeah.
And I thought about the global effect of what that says, that had it not been for the video, had it not been for this 17-year-old at the time of her courage of saying, it's not right. I wasn't raised that way. Something about this doesn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's big to me. And it stands before young people to say that you have to have your input too. And you have to say when something, even in the classroom, in your family, in your neighborhood, it's not right, because killing our children has got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting to the point where it's getting to adults, and we're saying we're hurting so bad we can't function, and our children need us. And that young man, Marcus, will tell you more than ever now.
Yes, the anxieties are coming along. The immune system is like the brain of the body. So a lot of the illnesses that come with the anxieties that we experience, from heart disease, the stress, it's having an impact on us even at the younger ages. I had a buddy, he's 44, had a heart attack already. But yep. My stresses are as well. My son just got his license and a car all in the same week. And that's what it comes with pleasure and pain that he did get his license. So the anxiety and in my heart daily, just having a concern, okay, we've gone over this 100 times. You get pulled over, do this. It's a gift and a curse. I can't even explain, but to, making sure you just graduated. So not only that, graduated, license, and car, but no job at this time. So he has a number of job offers, but that fear that comes along with what we've been socially engineered and have seen throughout history is there's a chance, son, that you will be pulled over, a high chance that you'll be pulled over. and I pray that you make it home to us safely. I just
How old is your son? How old is your son?
he's 18.
Okay, great.
18 years old. So, and so he has a multicultural friends, right? So that, you know, he has a real close white friend that he doesn't understand the laws and the rules are not the same for you. You have barriers and laid before you that you have to recognize. There's signs and symbols that you need to recognize on how you need to navigate through this earth. Even if you don't follow those instructions, if you're not in the house at a proper time, if you're in the wrong area, just thinking you can be hanging with these certain individuals, the rules don't apply the same to you, you know. So fighting for that justice, but it's difficult to change biases without education. You know, these biases are deep rooted in these individuals. So, you know, that's just one concern that is going to always follow me.
Well, it's going to follow mothers of young ladies too. Both of my daughters have humongous afros, and they have been stopped 6 times so far. And there has been money and faked up charges, and there was nothing we could do. It just is driving while black, more so with males, but it happens for young women as well. We have a lot of layers that we've got to deal with. And again, and I'm always reminded when writing about Dr. B that it's African American Child Wellness Institute, and that wellness is going to be so important for our young kids going back to school. They don't know what to think. Teachers don't know how to impress upon them that we're moving ahead and that it is worth working hard for a future and not giving energy. Al always talks about the problems and the solutions and how much time we spend on discussing the problems. We know what they are. Mr. Mayor, where are our solutions?
Could I have the talking stick? Okay, so what I want to say in response to what you said, Sister Brenda, and also Brother Marcus, is that when our children go to school, there are people in that school who are teachers from their hearts. I grew up with teachers. I think I've told people my mom taught school for 44 years. My father was a construction worker and a janitor during my lifetime. And so one of the things that I realized is that there are teachers who teach from the heart. And there are some who teach from their head, and there are some who teach from their pocketbook. And so when they get in the classroom, the teachers who teach from their heart, they have belief, they have faith, they have an intentionality and a belief that there's a divine purpose and calling for them to be in that noble profession of teaching. So they teach not just books, they teach about life, they teach about using common sense. And so one of my colleagues, her name is Dr. Bertha Garrett Holliday. She did a study, no relation to me, but Garrett, I claim her, no relation to me, but she did a study on teachers. Mm-hmm. And what she found is that she would give teachers, kids information, and they would say which of the kids in their classrooms they thought were going to fail. Then they'd say which of the kids they thought would be successful. Then she asked the children, what does your teacher think of you? Does she think you're going to fail or be successful? So the children who believed that their teacher thought that they would be successful, they did better in their performance. But the rub was this. Some of the teachers who didn't believe in the kids, but the kids thought the teachers believed in them, those kids still did well. So the teacher's behavior gave a message to the children somehow that I believe in you, even if their head is going, I don't know if you're going to make it. So we have to teach teachers how to transfer, just like my brothers, transfer that faith, that belief, even if they hold doubts, how to at least act like they believe the kids can make it. And like they say, fake it till you make it. So they can at least act like they think the kids can make it. So in our community, I think a lot of us need to act like our kids can make better choices. We need to act like our kids have hope and can have hope. We don't have to keep pressuring them about failure and loss and fear.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to be balanced, because the reality is they are living in a world where their dark skin or even their light skin and their afros will make them have some judgment, some implicit biases about who they think they are. And unfortunately, when we have trauma and our brain shuts down, we do fight, flight, or freeze. And so kids running from policemen, grown folks running from policing, not sitting in there with the history that policemen have, not feeling safe, they behave like they're not safe. But the problem is the police have the same trauma. And so, but they got guns. And that's where we need to really have our conversation. And with that, I'll pass the stick to my brother Al.
I want to pass it on to Marcus. Marcus, we have you react to that because you're.
She just took us to church.
Well, one of the you have the 3 F's, but another F that we talk about in mental health is fawning, and fawning is going along with because of certain fears. You fawn and you just go along with the crowd, and that's a portion of anxiety. And I think a lot of times these law officers that are in positions to make statements and to fight against injustice on those moments, you'll find them just going along because of the fear and the anxiety of, if I say something, how will I be looked at? That's a very important portion for individuals who are dealing with people who are making, say, racist statements on the job. To be anti is to be against. So in any moment when you witness these instances, you have to say something. You can't be quiet about it. And I think those small things will help build upon and press upon this next generation more and more as we move forward.
So let me take the talking stick back, Marcus, and just for the sake of conversation, thank you, you got it. So I hear you and I believe you. I know that you're right, but I want to put in as juxtaposition, and I mentioned this before, that when I was 12 years old, Aunt Mary, who lived in our house, who was like maybe 99 or 100 or so, maybe 98, but she was old. And we used to send us out in the yard to get an alum twig, because she used an alum twig to clean her teeth. That's how old she was, right? She knew the natural resources that we go to the drugstore for today. But she called me in and said, Alvin, I want you to always remember, I'm 12 years old, I'm a boy. When you around white people, make sure you say yes, sir, and no, sir. Make sure you say yes'm, no. And she pronounced these things, these words, the gesture with a specificity. And it wasn't just the word, it's how you use the word. It's the demeanor that you had to adopt, to put on, to wear in order to say this word, to deliver this. And she told me this because she was trying to tell me how to stay alive, right? And so I say that as a juxtaposition because now Marcus Bentley is saying, when we see something, we got to say something, right? But I think my auntie would have said, that whole package of information that she was speaking from out of her truth is different from what you're saying. I think we've moved in the right direction, but I want us to be cognizant of the changing nature of the world and of our times. And as we are, how do we be prepared to take it to the next step, Marcus Bentley? What is the next step? And you saying, if you see something, say something. Well, then the next step, kind of in today's conversation, is when will you become the law? We talked about our cousins and our brothers and sisters who are in law enforcement. We've talked in the past about our people in military. At some point in time, when do we adopt this sense of equity ownership, where we believe that each breath we take is the breath of democracy, that our thoughts matter that deeply, right? And that our decisions are that critical, and that they have that sense of finality in them and of them because they're important, because we said it. Now, I may be saying too much. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. B. You can straighten me out, Dr. B.
I don't think you're saying too much, and I don't think there's much straightening. But when you were talking a moment ago, I thought about my father, and I often tell people that he was born in 1898, and my grandpa was a slave. And so I remember a saying that he taught us early on, a saying that was passed down from one generation of slaves to the next. And this is what he said. He said, wisdom's ways you wisely keep. 5 things observe your care. Of whom you speak, to whom you speak, and how, and when, and where. All 7 of us kids, he taught that to us over and over and over. So when we speak to power, to whom are we speaking? Where are we speaking? How are we speaking? You know, when are we speaking? Because I know recently, I believe it was last year sometimes, there was a Black officer that did a presentation. I read that in the paper at the city council. And he said that we needed to recruit more Black women, more women of color. We need to get more officers of color. And he said, because if we don't, we'll just, I think I read that we'll just keep getting more white boys. Well, he said that, and a week or so later, he was fired for saying white boys.
Yep.
And he was a Black man with a Black police chief, and he got fired for speaking truth to power. So when we think about that, what does that do for all the other Black officers who may feel similarly? They're not going to speak up. That's like Willie Lynch. That's why you got lynched, so the rest of the slaves would behave. So how do we? I'm just drilling down, going deeper. If we're gonna do this talk, let's take it on so that we can be instructive. But we have to be honest about what we're up against and how we can creatively overcome it. Because that kaumba, the creativity in us, that's the only way out for us. We have to make a way out of no way and create that power in our communities. So I'm passing the stick to Marcus. He's going like this. I don't want the brother getting whiplash. So I'm passing the mic.
You just influenced a lot of thought. You know, our hearts through George Floyd and how the nations stood up against the ills and how diverse everyone was when you look at the footage. I think we need to keep the fuel on the fire, and now the soil of our hearts is prepared to plant that seed and develop and cultivate that seed, to have these discussions, because they're so woven into the fabric of our nation. And I think we're prepared, and I believe through my faith that the Creator has prepared this moment, and we got to keep our foot on the gas. I know that for sure. And don't our white brothers and sisters and from other cultures, don't make them feel uncomfortable when they're coming to you. I got one of my buddies, Ryan Burke. When Juneteenth became a holiday, he was one of the first ones to say happy holiday, and this is one of my white brothers from another mother. And we make sure we communicate our feelings. Pastor Isaac, and I live in a predominantly white neighborhood. When George Floyd was executed, he came over and said, I want you to know I don't agree. I don't agree with what happened. So to make them feel comfortable, he's all, so we can have these discussions and talk about it is more than politics when it comes to this point. And those individuals that are faith-based, and we have our faith community to really press upon this opportunity as well. So the door is wide open right now. And we don't want people to feel like they're being bombarded by it. The language has to be clear too. This is a us issue. It's a we issue. It's we the people of the United States. And so when you approach it like that, it makes it more comfortable to educate because they're ready because they didn't know. You have to look at it. All their lives, they've been taught these biases. So opening their minds and their hearts to be ready to learn these things is now. You know, I know a number more people than ever really want to reach out, you know, and you might be that only Black friend for a minute until they meet your family or your friends. And a lot of people believe that we are uneducated. You know, they don't understand that we have jobs, we have degrees, you know, and breaking down those walls. You know, a lot of them, when they get into a circle with educated African Americans, it's shocking. Like, and they'll make statements like, I didn't know. I didn't know. I was taught this certain way. So giving them an opportunity to come in our trust circle as well and talk about the things that hurt.
So let me, I'll take the talking stick back from you, Brother Marcus. Are you guys hearing me now? Dr.
Yeah.
B, hear me? Okay. And so I'm just throwing this out to keep the conversation mixed up. I remember listening to, I believe it was either Toni Morrison or one of the other great, you know, women writers. I think it was Toni Morrison being interviewed by maybe Bill Moyer or somebody on public TV. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't Toni Morrison, it was someone, maybe it's like someone like Gwendolyn Brooks, one of the two.
Okay.
But a luminary, right? A gift. And, you know, the interviewer, you know, who's a friend, an ally, and in the spirit of allyship, was asking her about white friends. And she said, she didn't talk about white friends. What she did say is that in her experience, she has to be mindful and remember that white people betray Black people. And she said, my experience is it's not a question of whether this person that I see as a friend or sees me as a friend will betray me. It's only a question of when. And so I'm just throwing that out there because, you know, you mentioned friends and allies, and I'm in the same situation you're in, where people that I work with and even neighbors of mine and even family members, you know, who are not all African, not all African American, some are, you know, different nationalities and ethnicities. And I respect that and I appreciate it. I value that because we have this unique ability to be inclusive in our orientation to everything. So we invite everybody into our circle, into our house, and we are reflective of this spirit of democracy and inclusion. I think that's the case. So having said that, and nonetheless, I'm just remembering the novelist's comment or the poet's comment about it's not a question of whether you'll be betrayed, but a question of when. Dr. B, is that good advice, sound advice, or simply advice based on lived experience that you don't have to judge, just be aware? What do you think, Dr. B? I'm passing the stick back to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to take it because what you just kind of triggered in me is some psychological work that has been done on identity development. And there's a model about how to become Black. It's called negrescence, the process of becoming Black. But there's also a model of how to see yourself, how to see your identity in the context of whiteness. And that's called the minority identity development model. But in both models, the first stage is conformity and overvaluation of white people. And white people have it. They see white culture as better. Black people see white culture as that better. And we are taught that in that first stage called conformity. In the second stage, they call it dissonance, where there's confusion over your bias of if you're white or if you're Black, your bias and preference for white. Why do I have this? So you run against all of these stereotypes you hold about what Black people are, and they get shattered. Even if you're a Black person, you may have a stereotype that black folks, they gonna steal. We're gonna have a party. Somebody pooking them gonna come up there and bring a gun. Or somebody gonna get. We have all of these stereotypes ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in that dissonant stage, when you're with people and they break that stereotype, you get kind of confused. Then the third stage is called immersion. Because you're angry that you preferred white for so long, you become like a person who over-identifies with people who've been victims. You over-identify. I remember when I was in that stage, my brother said, because I'm short, he said I was like a militant midget. Because I grew a fro like Angela Davis. I started wearing dashikis. Then, kill all the white folks, take our land back, get our power. Oh, you should have seen me. I was in college about that age, standing on benches, giving speeches in front of the student union. And so when you're in that state, you're on fire because you don't know that you didn't know what it meant to be black. You didn't understand that you go in with shame because you go in saying yes and you had to survive. Mm-hmm. And now your parents did floors, scrubbed floors and worked in white folks' stores so you wouldn't have to. Now you're in college and you may be the only one or two in your college, in your church, in your neighborhood. And then you get in that space and you start realizing we were more than slaves. We were kings and queens and scholars and astrologers. We were the first scientists. We discovered that. And when we learn, we lose and shed that shame and it's replaced with pride. But in that space of immersion, only black will do. That's when I joined Delta Sigma Theta. That's when I joined Black Voices Choir. That's when I joined the student organization of Black Unity. So boo. So I was in that space. And one of my sorority sisters cheated on me. I knew I couldn't stand white folks. But then my sorority sister told me my boyfriend had a long head and it looked like a hammer, and I looked at it and it did look hammer shaped. So I decided to stay in one weekend and study. By Sunday, when I went into church to pray for the study and the stick, who was sitting up there with my boyfriend? But my sorority sister, this black sorority sister, took my man over the weekend. So then I had to understand black on black betrayal. And that's when I realized and at the same time, it's a little white girl from Minnesota. She would sneak behind the library because the white kids wouldn't let me come to the study groups. She sneaked behind the library every Wednesday and sneaked me the notes from the study groups, like the Underground Railroad. And so I grew to love her. And that's when it hit me. I said, I can't love her. She's white. Then it hit me what Martin Luther King said. You can't judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Then you start introspection and deciding who you should be hanging with and why you should. And then finally, it's that last stage. We call it a synergistic awareness, where you articulate who you are and you understand that to be pro-black, you don't have to be anti-white. To be pro-woman doesn't mean you have to be against men. And you understand that people who aren't in your group may have a bias against you. And education will teach them and exposure will teach them, but you keep a healthy paranoia. That's what the psychologists say. To be healthy, you need to keep a healthy paranoia, because everybody doesn't go to diversity training. Chauvin went, he didn't learn a thing. Mm-hmm. So everybody doesn't get it. Just like the Bible parable about throwing the seeds. On some fall on good soil, some don't. So to me, what you've just introduced is the idea of how to select healthy people to align with. And is it okay to be uncomfortable if you are a white person in the presence of black folks? Because we're uncomfortable with them, especially if they got a badge or falling behind us in a car. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to pass the stick now to Sister Brenda.
I'm speechless.
I'm just saying.
Yep. I really don't have anything to say. I just, I think about the day and I think about what's going to happen within hours when we get news. But I think that all of your categories that you just mentioned, our young people need to be able to fill into that. And one thing I remember, Dr. Babington Johnson and Tyrone Terrell, both of them said the same thing: one block at a time, one child at a time, one family at a time. And then where we prioritize our energy in making the most positive results. And Victor Martinez, he is so passionate about his quest of West Broadway and the young people, because Ward 5 has more youth than any of the other wards. And he just says, this isn't normal, what we're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to address this abnormality as adults and caring and loving parents. And it sounds like a Dr. B mantra. We got to give them a hug. We got to love them. We've got to tell them that they have value and that they have a future, and that their skin color doesn't determine the character, as you just said, of their heart and soul. So that's where we are. It's hurtful when we think of those young people and the data that you hear with young children being killed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gotta stop. I'm talking about a quiet revolution and a prayer revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about what we need right about now.
Right.
But I'm going to pass it back over to Al.
Thank you, Brenda. So I just want to throw some more stuff in the game here.
He loves this.
I'm going to complicate things for us a little bit. And because as we're talking about young people and children, two ideas. One, I was in at a sort of one of my Egyptian friends teaches at a university and wanted some white university students to learn about African culture, African American culture. So we're at a Starbucks, and then one of the guys who was in the group with me as a guest panelist was a Somali guy, and I was floored when the Somali guy told the 8 or 9 little white kids that were there that as an immigrant, the Somali community tried to keep the children away from playing basketball and rather direct them towards soccer or volleyball. And the subtext was Black people play basketball and white kids play soccer. And so this Somali educator was saying that the elders in the Somali community were trying to dissuade contact between newly arrived Somalis and those of us who are part of the legacy African American community. Now that reflected two things. One is that he was buying in and supporting narratives created by white people to foster division, right? And to create a view of Black people as the other and as the problem, right? So here he was, in a sense, demonstrating that he was acceptable because he didn't want to raise his children to play basketball, and that a metaphor for playing in the Black reality arena. So that's one thought. Hold that one. One of the most gripping interviews I've done was with Vice Commander Riek Machar. Riek Machar was the general of the Sudanese People's Liberation Army. He was also the vice chair of the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement, SPLM, SPLA. He was a battlefield commander, and he was at my office here in North Minneapolis and on a couple of radio interviews that I did with him in the studio at KFAI, and also at a panel that I did at, I think, Augsburg College or Hamlin, one of the universities. I invited members from the not Somali, but the Sudanese community. This was after the wind down of the war in Sudan. And as the country was negotiating its way to stay or leave the government in Khartoum and become a separate nation, a new nation, the nation of South Sudan. So he said to me that they're in a peace posture now, but the one thing he regrets and is working with, grappling with, is the fact that they had mobilized 10, 11, and 12 and 13-year-olds to be warriors, to fight. They armed them, and these children were armed combatants in a war that lasted 20 years and a war that cost 5 million lives in that 20-year period. And so the juxtaposition here is, on the one hand, my Somali friend talking about the bad character of Black Americans, not directly, but in so many words, supporting a white narrative about who Black people are, Black identity, right? As suspicious, as dangerous as the other is outside. And on the other hand, here is the general saying what we did and have done, and what, by extension, I'm saying is what we're capable of as human beings, all of us, not just our people, is the very worst. When you mobilize children, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, his challenge then was, how do I reverse that, move them out of this both drug and military posture, because they use drugs in part to anesthetize these children, to have them go do the unspeakable, right, on the battlefield. And how do we bring them back to a sense of normalcy, of what being a human being is. So my thought here is, I weigh, the attitude of the Somali friend of mine, and I know that, Somalia had the same experience as Sudan, variations on theme. All of the nations emerging out of Africa, emerging out of colonialism, imperialism, had variations on theme in terms of an experience like that. And so we know what is capable. And so how do we address that, where we don't feel like, at the end of the day, we have the ability to do whatever it takes to march our families, our community, and ultimately humanity towards freedom. And if I keep thinking this, I'll go very far with it, right? But I'm throwing out there, Dr. B, how do we approach this question of equity, of ownership? And this is in the spirit of Brother Marcus's comments: always tell the truth, tell our truth, always speak up, challenge and critique, criticize disinformation, misinformation, arrogance from those that are speaking with intention or misinformation, ignorance, both of which are stifling to our humanity and our development. So throwing it out there, not an answer, just what are your reactions, your thoughts? We'll go to you first, Marcus Bentley. I mean, this may make no sense at all, but I'm dropping it out there just to mix it up.
Well, you made me think about internalized racism and how it's passed down not only through the ideals of families and communities, but genetically. You begin to genetically fear, and those genetic fears are fed by media outlets and educational systems. So by implementing interventions in the educational systems and educating not only the educators, it will influence the ideals of society. So our educational systems are broken, especially when it comes to educating our youth. So actually what you highlighted, speaking those truths and going back and educating the parents as well. So in educating all those, you can start in the educational systems, and you have to teach the truth, the true history. You have to open up the ugly history, the beautiful history, the heritage. And like you said, with colonialism, these are the word race if you look at the word race historically, is derived from the race to strip Africa of its natural resources. So the word race has been developed and designed over the years, you know, and if you look at the history of the word itself, but it's about product. It's about a capitalistic thought and power and manipulating power and creating this ideal, which we talked about before, that there's not enough. So they create this ideal that we're fighting over crumbs, but there's not enough room, and that's a lie. So if they play that game, and then now we fall back and fall victim to this competitive lifestyle that you're trying to force people down. So you got the corporate ladder. You feel in our educational systems that you gotta oppress people and press people down to get what you need, and you don't have to do that. So to work together, it would really, the world would change if we work together. You know, there's more than enough space and opportunity to grow and to spread the love, and spread the truth, spread the love, spread the resources.
I love that. Dr. B, what do you think?
I just want to say amen to what he said, because the truth is that there's space in our hearts. That's the part of us that has an endless capacity to put more people in it. There's always more room. Folks can scoot over in your heart. And when you do that, that's why when I do diversity training, I don't talk to people's heads first. I talk to their hearts. Mm-hmm. Because when we were children, that was the part that led us. And if we can just remember who we really are and who we were created to be, love will overcome it. Love will overcome fear and ignorance and will give us courage. So Brother Marcus is talking about love. Love for yourself and love for each other. So I just say I agree. I can pass it to Sister Brenda before we wrap it up.
Right.
My grandmother used to tell me that I was like that banana popsicle. I could just keep licking and licking and enjoying and enjoying. And she said, baby Dow, you enjoy yourself. And I think that's what we have to tell our children. And I was listening to Mitch McConnell the other night about the 1619 project. And one of my former students sent me a Facebook and said, B. Gray, do you remember how many times you taught the Diary of Anne Frank? And we could study the Holocaust, but the only thing that we knew about Black history was slavery. You told us about Timbuktu. And we started studying, and they became empowered. And I became empowered through them. And that's who we've got to reach. And we have to reach those babies by knowledge and about the time that we're living in right now. We've been through it. I mean, 2020 was just like, wow. But now we got to go beyond. And we've got to grab the chance and the opportunity, and we've got to stand up, and we just have to yell. I just finished this article on Spider Hamilton, and Spider Hamilton said that James Brown pointed at the band, and he said, I'm yelling, take it to the bridge. And that's what we need to do, is to take our children to the bridge and tell them, no, you don't have to jump. You just have to build a stronger one. So I'm just hoping we can get to the parents, because as you say, Dr. B, the ruin of a nation starts within the family. So anyway, thank you. I always love Fridays. It's just great. And Marcus, just continue doing your work, because boy, you are really impressive.
God is,
really are.
Thank you. God is good.
Marcus, before we close, let people know again about your organization, because people may want to send you some money.
Lava.
Well, the name of our organization is Lava Athletics, and Lava stands for Learning Abilities for Victory and Achievement. We're a sports theme organization, so we use athletic themes and sports to encourage the youth and build unity. You know, so that's in a nutshell. We do a lot of community development projects and team building. So a collaborative relation like this is important. you know, just to be fed from the elders and to be able to take it back into our community here in Ohio. And it's just vital. And you guys are just right on the right track. It's necessary.
We're going to try to get your buddy on from, he's in Atlanta, I think, who's a former Minnesota Viking.
Yes, Dwight Smith.
Dwight Smith. We were trying to get him connected to the program. But
Yeah,
let him know I said hello. We're looking forward to him. And you know what would be great, Marcus, is to have a conversation about the recent discussions about paying athletes in college. I think that's a big turning point. I think. I mean, I'm not following athletics, but I'm following that. And I'd love to have your comments and have our community discuss
That would be good.
how we've exploited athletes and how that table has to be turned as well, and are moving in the right direction.
I like that.
Okay.
Great.
Dr. B, final word for you.
All I'd like to say is thank you all for joining us on the Healing Circle. And I want to say that COVID didn't get us. We're still standing. Cops didn't get us. We're still standing. And as we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, we can only see a large, wonderful horizon above, in front of us. So we have to nurture, love, keep each other well, keep each other accountable, and know that we are resilient and we're still rising.
I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Wow.
Suffering.